From the opinion pages of the Wall Street Journal, this is Potomac Watch.
The House Ways and Means Committee releases a testimony of two IRS whistleblowers who claim a Department of Justice investigation into Hunter Biden's taxes was handled improperly, riddled with preferential treatment and conflicts of interest. What exactly are these IRS investigators alleging, and just what was Hunter up to with his tax returns? Welcome to Potomac Watch. I'm Kim Strassel, joined today by my wonderful and knowledgeable colleagues, Bill McGurn and Kate Batchelder Odell. More than 4 years ago, the U.S. Attorney for Delaware, David Weiss, took up an investigation into allegations surrounding the president's son, Hunter Biden, including problems with his taxes. Early last week, we got the results of that with a plea deal in which Hunter got simple misdemeanor charges for 2 years of his taxes, for which he'll likely avoid any jail time, and a pretrial diversion agreement that will likely allow him to avoid a felony firearms charge. Yet now, House Republicans have released transcripts of hours worth of testimony from two IRS agents who worked alongside the FBI and prosecutors on Mr. Weiss's team on that probe. One, Gary Shapley, is a 14-year veteran of the IRS, a senior supervisory agent who leads a team of agents who specialize in international tax investigations. The second has remained anonymous, but has also been with the IRS for a number of years and was on the Hunter investigation from the start. They made some pretty explosive charges that this case was not handled properly and gave us some new insight into just what was being investigated. So, Bill, I think to start us off, just as a baseline question, I know you've read these transcripts. What do you make of these whistleblowers and their credibility? And what are some of the biggest claims that they are making in terms of improper behavior?
Well, I think that if you read the testimonies I read this weekend in full, what comes across is they really are career investigators. And what they're really talking about is at every point, whether they want a search warrant or to ask questions about Joe Biden, they were thwarted by Department of Justice officials. So it was highly irregular. And there's a lot of those kind of allegations in there. It all seemed to come to a head at a October 7, 2022 meeting when Gary Shapley says David Weiss, the U.S. attorney investigating Joe Biden, admitted he wasn't the deciding attorney about whether charges could be brought. He said he had been denied the opportunity to present charges in District of Columbia by a Biden-appointed attorney, and that he had sought special counsel status and was also denied that. So those are three big claims. The IRS agent, Mr. Shapley, claims that meeting really clarified his thoughts. Now, stepping back a minute, the problem for the Biden folks is that this guy is a career investigator. He knows what he's doing, and he knows he smells something fishy. So at every step, he started documenting what happened by sending emails. So there's a record of all this. And right now, there's a clear discrepancy between what Merrick Garland testified before Congress, that Mr. Weiss had a free hand to decide what and where to present charges, and Mr. Weiss, who apparently told 6 people that he did not. So these are among the things that have to be clarified. And I think what it means is there's going to be a lot of subpoenas and a lot of witnesses called. In that 200 pages of testimony, there's a lot of names put out there. All those people, I presume, are going to be deposed.
Yeah, I want to get into this question a little bit more deeply of supposed political interference here by either Garland or higher ups at Maine Justice. One of the more explosive things that came out of this release was a July 30th, 2017 WhatsApp message from Hunter Biden to Henry Zhao, who's a Chinese businessman connected to a former Chinese energy conglomerate called CEFC. And in it, Hunter says, quote, "I am sitting here with my father, and we would like to understand why the commitment made has not been fulfilled." end quote. He goes on to demand that the businessman resolve this tonight, and then he warns, quote, if I get a call or text from anyone involved in this other than you, Zhang, or the chairman, I will make certain that between the man sitting next to me and every person he knows and my ability to forever hold a grudge, that you will regret not following my direction. I am sitting here waiting for the call with my father, end quote. So typical Hunter subtlety there. But Kate, one of the things that they talked about here is that after they got this message, they said the obvious thing was to therefore go and kind of follow up on it. And one of the things that they wanted to do was search the guest house at Joe Biden's Delaware residence where Hunter Biden was staying at the time. And apparently they were told they were not allowed to do that. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the claims that they make with regards to this?
So, right, Kim. So basically, the IRS wants to get a warrant to follow up on some of these WhatsApp messages. And to your point about the WhatsApp messages, we don't have any real understanding of what exactly the dispute is here. And the official writes back, there's a discussion about $5 million. And Hunter says, I could make $5 million at any law firm in America. To your point about subtlety, a real mafioso tactic here, that something is going on that we don't have many details about. But to your point about what the IRS wanted to do, to get warrants to search the residence, to get more fidelity on what these text messages were about, we know that a career official, Leslie Wolf, said there was more than enough probable cause for a physical search warrant there, and that David Weiss had reviewed the affidavit for the search warrant. But then this career official, Leslie Wolf, says that the optics were a driving factor in the decision on whether to execute a search warrant, and then gives this quote euphemistically here about whether the juice was worth the squeeze. So this is a pretty notable, remarkable statement here, basically saying that they're not going to do their due diligence here because of who the principal is and because Hunter Biden is Joe Biden's son. So I think that is a pretty damning indictment of what the decisions were being made around the time were. And we've talked a lot about this on this podcast about the ways that investigative agencies have treated presidential candidates and their families. This treatment is not similar to what the cases we've been discussing with Donald Trump is, for instance. And so there does seem to be a real case of putting their thumb on the scale here and not going forward because of Joe Biden.
This seems to be the crux of the matter to me of the big claims that they are making, that in every single scenario, the regular steps were not taken because of the names attached to the two people. And they give some other examples of this. They note that, for instance, prosecutors wanted to take Hunter Biden's name off of documents, including search warrants, for instance, because they didn't want anyone to know who it was they were trying to search. They gave another example in the wake of that WhatsApp message. They wanted to pursue that search warrant, but one excuse that DOJ prosecutors were giving back to them, they claim, for not pursuing them was the possibility that Hunter had simply been lying about his father's presence there. And so Mr. Shapley said, so then we said, well, okay, then let's get the location data for the messages. And if they're co-located, then we'll know whether or not the president was really there with Hunter at the time that this was sent. So essentially saying, let's see where the president's phone was. And they were blocked from doing that as well, too, even though the second whistleblower said that that would normally be exactly what they would do if they were trying to follow up in a situation like this. Bill, there's a couple of other things I don't know. I know you've been through the transcripts, too, about not being allowed to question family members. Did you get the impression reading this that you agree that the kind of big point here was that they are making the allegation that all of this was handled in a way to essentially protect the president and his son to a degree?
Yes, it looked like every instance he brought up, what happened is DOJ didn't want to know. I mean, Leslie Wolf, the assistant U.S. attorney that Kate mentioned, she also told them they couldn't bring up dad or the big guy when they interviewed Hunter's business associates. And in addition to that search warrant of the premises, there was another search warrant that they planned to execute on a storage facility, I think in Northern Virginia, where Hunter had put a lot of his papers and documents. And they say that Leslie Wolf called up Hunter's defense attorneys and basically ruined their chance at a surprise search. I don't know whether that's true or not, but all these things, one of the things is these are very specific claims rather than a broad claim. Joe was on take or something. These are very specific claims, and they're witnesses, and you can get to the truth or falsity of them relatively easily. And so I think the answer is going to be Republicans are going to put them under oath, under the same penalties that the whistleblowers have if they tell false statements, which is a perjury charge.
Yeah, this is going to be really fascinating. I agree.